Today we will be learning about group dynamics, specifically about conformity. The objectives in this lesson are to understand what is conformity, Asch's research on conformity, Sherif's research on the autokinetic phenomenon. Individuals as part of a group influence each other in many ways. Social influence involves efforts by one or more people to change behavior, attitudes, or feelings of one another. This is according to research by Cialdini in 2006. Social influence may have positive goals, for example, to help lose excess weight, or even negative goals, for example, to steal. Generally, when the goals are negative, hidden, devious and ulterior, plans are schemed to arrive at the goal with the help of persuasion. Direct efforts to change others' overt behavior through requests are often termed as compliance, which involve specific requests to which people can react as they wish to. These can be formal or informal, and this kind of influence is known as conformity. Conformity refers to the pressure to behave in ways that are viewed as acceptable or appropriate by a group or society. Change, on the other hand, can be produced by direct orders or commands, and this can be termed as obedience. In this lesson, we shall examine the first form of social influence called as conformity. In contexts where norms are more obvious, greater conformity by most people can be expected compared to the contexts like this, where norms are less clear about what action is the correct one. The fact that we can predict others' behavior and even our own with considerable confidence in these and many other situations illustrates the powerful and general effects of pressures toward conformity, toward doing what we are expected to do in a given situation. Conformity, in other words, refers to pressures to behave in ways consistent with rules, indicating how we should or we ought to behave. These rules are known as social norms, and they often exert powerful effects on our behavior. In other situations, norms may be unspoken or implicit, and in fact may have developed a totally informal manner. For example, leaving a tip to a waiter who has served you food at a restaurant. Now let us understand more about the strong tendency toward conformity or toward going along with a group's expectations. Also, we can learn about how we should behave in various situations, which at times may seem objectionable as it places restrictions on personal freedom. On the other hand, it brings an order to our lives and regulates behavior and helps predict the expected, though it may not always be so. Another reason people conform is simply to look good to others or to make a positive impression on them. For instance, at work, many employees adopt what are known as facades of conformity, the appearance of going along with the values and goals of their organizations, even if they really do not. And in short, people often use conformity as a tactic of self-presentation. This is according to research by Hevlin in 2009. We tend to wear the same styles of our clothing as our friends, listen to the same music, see the same movies and read the same books and magazines, etc. Overall, we feel much more comfortable when we are similar to our friends and family than when we are different from them. More direct evidence for the fact that we believe we are less susceptible to conformity pressure than other people is provided by research conducted by Pronin, Berger and Moloky in 2007. They reasoned that people underestimate the impact of social influence on their own actions because in trying to understand these actions, they tend to focus on internal information rather than the overt actions. As in the famous actor-observer difference, each of us know much more about our own thoughts and feelings than we do about the others. So, when we estimate how much they are and how they will be influenced by conformity pressure, we tend to conclude that social influence is less important in shaping our actions than those of other people. For instance, we know that we choose to dress in popular styles because we like them, not because others are wearing them. But when making the same judgment about other people, we assume that they are sheep following the herd. Pronin and his colleagues call this as the introspection illusion. That means to refer to the fact that often conformity occurs without introspection. In short, it appears that although we show conformity in many contexts for a good reason, we underestimate the extent to which others' actions influence us in this way. Given the importance and prevalence of conformity, it is surprising that it received relatively little attention in social psychology until the 1950s. Let us now look at few everyday life examples of conformity. We all are guided and surrounded by several social rules and regulations which we have to follow while we live in a society. We follow these rules throughout our life. For example, like behaving well in the class, respecting elders, following norms of the community. And when we deviate from these norms that are present within the culture or the environment or in family or social groups that we belong to, we often feel pressure from others to conform to the beliefs, and the desire to be viewed favorably and accepted by others is strong in social animals, including people. Conformity often requires no overt pressure. Most people naturally adopt behaviors, beliefs and appearances that are similar to those of their peer group. However, pressure to conform may be subtle or overt and might also be exerted by practices such as ostracizing people who do not conform or even mocking them when they differ in their values. Asch's research on conformity. Solomon Elliott Asch, born in September 14, 1907, was a Polish American psychologist and a pioneer of social psychology. He created great pieces of work in impression formation, suggestion, conformity, and on many other areas of research. His work follows a common theme that the Gestalt psychologists believe. According to Asch, most social acts have to be understood in their setting and they lose meaning if isolated. There is no error in thinking about social facts being more serious than the failure to see their place and function. He demonstrated the influence of group pressure on opinions as well. He was ranked as the most cited psychologist of the 20th century. Solomon Asch in 1951 carried out a series of experiments on conformity that yielded dramatic results. He created a compelling social dilemma for his participants, whose task was to simply respond to a series of perceptual problems. In this figure, we see the experimenter having a standard line on the left side and 3 comparison lines on the right side. Figure shows the standard line and the comparison line, and also the subjects and the confederates. Confederates here are the accomplice or those people who know what is happening in the experiment. On each of the problems, the participants were to indicate which of the 3 comparison lines matched a standard line in length. Several other people, that is usually 6 to 8 of them, were also present during the session, but they were unknown to the real participant and all were assistants of the experimenter. On certain occasions known as critical trials, 12 out of the 18 problems, the accomplices or confederates offered answers that were clearly wrong. They unanimously chose the wrong line as a match for the standard line. Moreover, they stated their answers before the real participants responded. Thus, on these critical trials, the people in Asch's study faced precisely the type of dilemma described above. Should they go along with the other individuals or stick to their own judgments? The judgments seem to be very simple ones. So, the fact that the other people agreed on an answer different from the one the participants preferred was truly puzzling. A large majority of people in Asch's research chose conformity. Across several different studies, though he is a Polish American experimenter, 76% of those tested went along with the group's false answers at least once, and overall they voiced agreement with these errors 37% of the time. In contrast, only 5% of the participants in a control group who responded to the same problems alone made such errors. Of course, there were large individual differences in this respect. Almost 25% of the participants never yielded to group pressure. At the other extreme, some individuals went along with the majority nearly all the time. When Asch questioned them, some of these people stated, "I am wrong and they are right." They had little confidence in their own selves or own judgments. Most, however, said they felt that the other people present were suffering from an optical illusion or were merely following the responses of the first person. Yet, when it was their turn, these people too went along with the group. They knew that the others were probably wrong, but they couldn't bring themselves to disagree with them. In further studies, Asch in 1959 investigated the effects of shattering the group's unanimity by having one of the accomplices break with the others or differ in opinion with the others. In one study, this person gave the correct answer and became an ally of the real participant. In another study, he chose an answer in between the one given by the group and the correct one. And in the third, he chose the answer that was even more incorrect than the one chosen by the majority. In the latter two conditions, in other words, he broke from the group but still disagreed with the real participants. Results indicated that conformity was reduced under all three conditions. However, somewhat surprisingly, this reduction was greatest when the rejecting assistant expressed views even more extreme and sometimes wrong than the majority. Together, these findings suggest that it is the unanimity of the group that is crucial. Once it is broken, no matter how, resisting group pressure becomes much easier. There is one more aspect of Asch's research that is important to mention. In later studies, he repeated his basic procedure, but with one important change. Instead of stating their answers out loud, participants wrote them down on a piece of paper. Conformity dropped sharply because the participants did not have to display the fact that they disagreed with the other people present. This finding points to the importance of distinguishing between public conformity, that is doing or saying what others around us say or do, and private acceptance, that is actually coming to feel or think as others do. Often it appears we follow social norms overtly, but don't actually change our private views. This is according to Maas and Clark in 1984. Now, let us learn about Sherif's research on the autokinetic phenomenon. Muzaffer Sherif, the pioneer social psychologist, was a Turkish psychologist, and he was born in 1906. He earned his master's at Harvard University, and during research work on group norms, he earned his PhD in 1935. Studying the social influence in perception, he wrote his dissertation titled Some Social Factors in Perception, and he made an intelligent use of the autokinetic effect and the experiment. His ideas and research work laid the basis for his first classic, world-famous book, The Psychology of Social Norms. He also was into various research projects and writing scholarly books. He spent most of his life as a professor at the University of Oklahoma in USA, besides enjoying academic positions at Princeton University as well, Yale and Pennsylvania State University. Now let's learn about Sherif's research on the autokinetic phenomenon. A clear illustration of private acceptance of social influence was provided many years ago by another founder of social psychology, Muzaffar Sherif, in 1937. He was interested in several questions, but among these, two were most important. How do norms develop in social groups, and how strong is their influence on behavior once the norms emerge? To examine these issues, he used a very interesting situation, one involving the autokinetic phenomenon, and this refers to the fact that when placed in a completely dark room and exposed to a single stationary point of light, most people perceive light as moving about. This is because in the dark room there is no clear cue to distance or location. The perceived movement is known as the autokinetic phenomenon. Sherif realized in 1937 in his experiments that he could use the situation to study the emergence of social norms. This is so because there is considerable ambiguity about how much the light is moving, and different people perceive it as moving different distances. In this figure, we see Sherif's experiment on the autokinetic phenomenon explained. Thus, when placed in this setting with several others and asked to report how much they perceive the light to be moving, they influence one another and soon converge on a particular amount of movement. That agreement, in a sense, constitutes a group norm. If the same individuals are then placed in the situation alone, they continue to give estimates of the light's movement consistent with the group norm. So, clearly the effect of such norms persists. This suggests that the effects reflect changes in what participants in these studies actually believe, private acceptance or commitment. After all, they continue to obey the group norm even if they are no longer part of the group. Sherif's findings also help explain why social norms develop in many situations, especially ambiguous ones. We have a strong desire to be correct or to behave in an appropriate manner, and social norms help us attain that goal. This is one of the key foundations of social influence. Another is the desire to be accepted by others and liked by them, which sometimes involves the facades of conformity. Together, these two factors virtually ensure that social influence is a powerful force, one that can often strongly affect our behavior. Solomon Asch's research was the catalyst for much activity in social psychology, as many other researchers sought to investigate the nature of conformity, to identify factors that can influence it, and to establish its limits. For example, Crutchfield in 1955, Gerard in 1955, and indeed such research is continuing today and is still adding to our understanding of the factors that affect this crucial form of social influence. So, in this lesson we have learnt about conformity, and all that conformity is in terms of how we respond to situations, how we respond to people around us, and how we always want to be part of a group, and how our behavior as such is influenced by a group or the presence of others. We also learnt about Asch's research on conformity. We learnt about him and the experiment and what it means to social influence. Finally, we learnt about Sherif's autokinetic effect, and this phenomena, which is demonstrated by the study of a dot of light in a dark room.